Hi, ladies. So today we're chatting to Rebecca Ahern. Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
Hi, Katie. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm really well. Thank you very much. So I'm going to pass over to you to do your intro and tell us who you are, what you do, and a little bit about you.
Okay, so my name's Rebecca Ahern. Most people call me Bex, and I'm 36, and I'm a wife to my husband Jason and mum to our little boy Monty. We live down in the southeast of England, and I am a coach. So I work with professional women and female entrepreneurs to help them build powerful careers and epic lives without the overwhelm and potential burnout that can come with that. We all end up in this place where we think we have to do so much and we can get really overwhelmed with it all. And I think particularly after you've had children as well, that balance of having, continuing to have a powerful career, whatever that might look like, and it might be the same, it might be different, as well as having a life that you want, and having that balance is really important. So that's what I do.
It changes, doesn't it, when you have children?
Absolutely, it does, yeah.
Things in a different perspective. And I think that part of you changes. I remember feeling, I think until my child was 2, I just completely lost the mojo of who I was, my youngest. It takes a while to kind of come back. So what is your story? How did you get to be a coach?
So I have been in the corporate world all of my career. So I started out way back when, actually in medical sales and marketing. So I sold and marketed hip and knee replacements really randomly. So I used to go into theatres and help surgeons and train registrars on how to use the kit. So completely random. Most people go, what? I didn't even know that happened. So it does happen. And then I ended up in FMCG, so fast moving consumer goods. And the business that I worked in was a sales and marketing organisation. So we helped manufacturers and retailers sell more stuff, frankly. So, Sainsbury's, Asda, Morrison's, Tesco's, predominantly those guys, some high street retailers as well, and then all the big brands you see, so Cadbury's, Red Bull, Molson, all of those sorts of brands. We work with them, and in the main ran out external sales teams for them. So I built my career in that industry, and for probably the last 10 or 11 years, my career kind of fast-tracked, and I moved sort of up through the ranks and found myself managing one of those businesses. And then we sold the business to a big American organisation, and for those of you in the marketing world, WPP, which is a very well-known marketing business. And then I started doing a group sales and marketing role across a number of different businesses. So we employed thousands of people and turned over tens of millions of pounds. So it was a big organisation. And I think that was that combined with having my little boy was probably the turning point for me. I had been really clear about what I wanted my life to look like. So I wanted, and it was all external stuff. So I wanted the big house. My husband was he's a show jumper, and I had always ridden. We wanted horses. We wanted the big house in the country, blah, 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 blah. So we worked really hard to get all of that, and we got it. And we had a beautiful big house. We had built our own stables, Olympic menage. We did it. We did the whole bit. And I had the big career with a 6-figure salary, and I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable, more miserable than I've ever been. And that's when I realised I'd got the formula wrong. So I thought that all of those things would make me happy and make me fulfilled. And I didn't really understand why I wanted those things, what feeling I was trying to get from those things. And then when I realised that, I realised that we had the formula all wrong. And my husband was pretty miserable as well. We're both in the same place. So we sold up. We sold a lot. My husband had a career change. I had a career change. So, people go, oh my God, you're lunatics. What are you doing? But he's just started a new career, and I left the corporate world. I resigned back in March, and we moved house, we moved area back to where we originally came from, that we thought we hated the area and realised when we moved away to live in the country, we didn't have our friends around us, and that was really important to us. So it all changed. So that moment for me was when I sat there with my baby boy going, what the hell am I doing? This isn't what I thought it was going to be. And started to think, okay, how could we change things and do things differently? because I think you get stuck in that, well, there's no way out,
Yeah.
I've got to, this is life and I've got to get on with it. And continued to be the main earner in the family as well, so it was a lot of pressure on me, and it was a massive step to go, do you know what? And at the time I didn't quite know what it was going to look like. I actually did a health coaching course because I thought, I love food and nutrition, and I thought maybe I could go that route. And I started that a year ago. And then by March, I was like, right, I have to resign. I've got to make a change. I've got a 6-month notice period. I'm just going to do it and figure it out. I didn't really know what it was going to look like, if I'm honest. So when I look back now, I suppose my confidence was, worst case scenario, I'll just go and get another job.
Exactly. But you had a nice buffer, I guess, for the 6 months.
Yeah.
In as much as you still had to make it work, but the 6 months was quite a long period for you, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I've noticed.
So that's how I've ended up doing what I'm doing now. And I really strongly believe that everybody can have it all. It's just that they have to get the formula right for them as an individual.
Yeah.
And when we think having it all is what everybody else in society expects of us, or what we think will make us happy, sort of in a materialistic way, that's when we get it wrong. And it's not to say we can't want a bigger house and a nicer car, all those things, but it's just about knowing which combination of things is right for you and getting really clear about that. And that's how you can then live a life where you have it all. And it's never perfect, and it's always going to be a journey, but I feel really passionately about that. And I've worked with so many men and women, but I'm finding I'm working more with women now who have been really quite miserable, particularly in the corporate world, but also many entrepreneurs, because they're trying to do it all and be it all to everybody, and they haven't got the space to figure out what the right answer is for them. And it doesn't necessarily mean leaving your job like I did, but it's just getting clear about what that balance is.
Definitely. It's an awful lot of pressure, I think, on women particularly, to do everything and to keep those balls kind of juggling, especially mums, with the children, the house and the job or the career or the business, whatever it may be. So yeah, definitely.
I saw a really interesting article actually a few weeks ago it was an American medical journal. So it was a paper that had been written, and they'd done some research and said that full-time working women do the equivalent of 2.5 times full-time jobs.
I know, it's crazy.
Whatever way you look at it. And my husband is amazing with my little boy, and he does a lot around here, particularly after I've spotted it and asked him to do it, rather than because he's making it. But he's very good. But even so, as a woman, you do end up taking the lion's share of the childcare and household responsibilities, and we're all a bit guilty of that, and not always good at asking for help. And that's a weakness, and that we should be able to do it all.
Exactly. I think we tend to try and do it all as well, and not ask for help enough. And then get annoyed when we're doing it.
Yes. Yeah,
this is going live, we shouldn't admit that. So what do you love most about working for yourself?
I guess there's 2 things I really love about working for myself. One is, and this is really more about the nuts and bolts of working for myself, is that I can work when, where, how I want. So for me, coming out of the corporate world where I was always in meetings or in the office or going to see customers or whatever, or even when I wasn't out and about, there was sort of an expectation that I'd be in the office. And what I love about working for myself is I can say, it's really cold today, I'm going to light the wood burner, I'm going to work in the living room on the sofa, if that's what I want to do. Or I can go and work from a coffee shop, or I can, actually I've got loads to do today that's nothing to do with work, so I'm going to do that, and then I'll pick up in the evening. And I have that complete flexibility. But I also love that now what I'm doing is something really personally fulfilling, and I see immediate benefit from the work I do, and I see it as a really positive, I can have a really positive impact on people. And whilst running a big corporate organisation, of course you're keeping people employed and enabling them to pay their mortgage and all of that, but it's kind of a step removed. You don't feel that on a day-to-day basis. With what I'm doing now, I really see that difference on a day-to-day basis when I'm working with my clients, and that really is what makes it all worthwhile for me.
Oh, that's fab. What do you find the most challenging or the most difficult part of working for yourself?
Again, there's probably 2 things. One is, if I'm really honest, in the corporate world, I had a lot of people to do stuff for me. And that sounds awful, but just the way things worked, I didn't do the detail.
Yeah,
there was teams of people that did the detail, and when you work for yourself and you're starting out particularly, you have to do everything from end to end. So I've learned all sorts of things about pixel code on websites and stuff I never even knew existed, because I didn't ever have to deal with that. An IT team or a digital team or whoever dealt with that.
There was a team to do it. Yeah,
exactly. So that's been difficult, because I find it's been a learning curve for me, having to learn all of that stuff, and then it's time consuming, and it's not really why doing that stuff
what you want to be doing.
So that's difficult. And also for me, I'm quite an extrovert in that I like to work with people and bounce off people. So whilst it's great when I'm in that coaching that I'm connecting with individuals, when I'm thinking about working on my business and where I'm going with my business, I don't have anybody to bounce off in that way. So I've got a coach who I work with, and that's really helpful, because otherwise right at the beginning I found I was going round and round in circles a lot. So that's probably been the hardest.
Nice to have that person to brainstorm with, or hold you accountable, or whatever it is, you get from it. I think you need somebody, whether that is a coach or a mentor, or whether that's even just a friend that's also self-employed, that understands the trials and tribulations. And how do you seem quite upbeat? How do you keep yourself motivated?
I guess I have some sort of little kind of ritual things I have now. One of the things I always said when I left the corporate world was, I can't wait to have the time to exercise and do stuff.
I say that all the time.
Struggle to fit in. I'm rubbish at it, if I'm honest. But I do try and get out in the fresh air every day, and it does make a massive difference to my motivation levels. It might not be. Some days I go out and I come back and I immediately feel better for it. Some days I don't, but I know that over time, if I keep going out every day, then I do feel better. And normally I just walk fast. I've got some woods at the end of my road, and I go up there and I do a stomp around the woods. I am trying to get back into running, but it's a very slow process. So I think probably that's one of the biggest things for me, is just getting that fresh air. And I guess, to an extent, celebrating little wins. So I kind of do a bit of go me. I know it's really cheesy and American, but sometimes like I said, a lot of the stuff that you have to do when you work for yourself particularly if you've come from corporate, isn't stuff that you would have done before, and you kind of think, it's all like the really basic stuff, and I should just be doing that easily and in my sleep. But the reality is that takes up a big chunk of your day. And when I get that stuff done, or I learn something new, or I find a piece of software that makes my life easier with that stuff, then I kind of have to say, look, you've done really well, you've achieved something, and you have to kind of tell yourself that sometimes, because otherwise it's easy to beat yourself up all the time saying, well, that's all well and good, but you should be there, and you should be there, and you should be moving, you should be further ahead than you are.
Take the shoulds away.
Exactly.
Away. Like you said, if you look at what you've actually achieved and what you've done, and the systems and tools that you've gone and self-learned, it's actually amazing. And it's something you wouldn't have done, like you said, in your past life. So
and obviously for me, because I'm coaching, when I am working with people and I see the progress that they make, that really motivates me. That's certainly my biggest motivator. But I don't sort of need motivating in the coachy stuff. It's the business stuff that is the demotivating stuff, I guess, that you've got to keep
all the other things. Which there's a lot.
Yes.
that you kind of need to do. Were you ever tempted to stay in corporate during those 6 months, or was it decision made and that's that?
Oh yeah. I mean, so I say yes, never seriously, but we moved house. So when we went through all of that, what the hell are we doing with our lives? We sold up and we moved house.
I love that.
When we moved house, we said, we are not buying another project. We are going to move into a house that's done, so we can just enjoy life. No, we bought another project. So of course there are times where I go, we've got that money in the bank that's kind of, to get the business going. If I went back to corporate, we could just get the house done up. So there's that occasionally, but it's not serious. And actually a few people say to me, well, have you got a backup plan? If you decide you don't like it, or it doesn't work, or whatever. And I haven't. I know I could go back to corporate, but it's not really at this stage what I want to do. And I feel that if I don't do what I'm doing now wholeheartedly, then I will look back and say, but I didn't really give it my all.
Exactly.
And I don't really want to think about that potential exit plan, because then it's almost, you know, there are going to be really tough times. There's always going to be tough times when you run your own business. And if that's too easy to go back to, then I might find myself jumping ship quicker than I really want to. But certainly right now, I have, no intentions whatsoever of going back to corporate in the same way that I did before. I may well at some point work with corporate and work in corporate to an extent, but I'd like to do it in a different way if I do.
Yes. You could do some consulting and stuff anyway, couldn't you, with the people that are there?
And I'm doing some consulting now. Excellent. So but it's
on your terms, isn't it?
Very different, exactly.
Definitely. So what advice would you give to somebody just starting off, or maybe like you in the corporate world, that's kind of did the real about taking that leap of faith? What advice would you give to them?
I guess, you know, I don't want to sort of encourage anybody to make a leap when it would be the wrong thing for them to do, and it's, you know, not properly thought through. But equally, for most of us, there's never a good time. You know, you can always say, oh, well, when my kids are in school, or when they're older, or when I've had kids, or, you know, whatever, or when we've got this much money in the bank or that much money in the bank. And I think the important thing is to be able to take a step back and determine what's really, really important to you, and then think outside the box about how you can make that happen in your life, and be willing to let go of stuff. You know, we had a 5-bedroom house with 7 acres, and we now live in a 3-bedroom house with a normal back garden. Yeah. We made that choice, which was painful in some respects, because, you know, we'd worked really hard to kind of achieve those things, and then to let go of them is really hard. But equally, when you step back and say, but what balance do I want in my life? What's really important to me? You can say, do you know what? I'm willing to let that go. Yes. And I think that would be the big thing is, you know, think outside the box about how you can get to where you want to be, and be willing and open-minded about letting things go or doing things differently that you've previously had sort of set in stone in your mind, because there are always ways. I also read a brilliant book at the point just before I resigned, and it might have just been for me the right book at the right moment in time, but it's probably what gave me the push to finally do it, which was Gabby Bernstein's book, The Universe Has Your Back. Yeah, read it. It's a bit kind of spiritual, and I'm not typically a very spiritual person, but it was really quite a powerful book. And one of the things she talks about there in that book is this idea that you have to take a step onto the escalator, even if you don't know where it's going, and you have to trust the universe will serve you, essentially, and that it's not all going to come crashing down around you. That you will, and it might not end up going where you think it's going to go, but you have to trust that it will take you somewhere positive. And I think that's really, I've kind of try and do that a lot now in my life. Having the faith in you as well, isn't it? Yeah. I found it quite a difficult book to start with as well. It was one of the first kind of self-development books, I guess, that I read, and I found it quite spiritual. And it was quite far out there for me when as a kind of first book. I didn't find it the easiest of books. I read an awful lot of self-development, and some bits I really struggled with, and some bits I found easier. But there's certain things. It depends on where you are, and for me, I'm not a really, a very spiritual person. So some of it, frankly, was a bit wooga wooga for me. And that's not to say it's wrong. It's just for me, it was just a bit, looking for signs and stuff. I find a little bit far-fetched personally, but that idea of, trusting that you have enough life experience, and that the world is generally a positive, good place, and that you'll figure it out. That I think that was the really powerful message for me. Definitely. If you could give us a favourite inspirational quote. So it would be from Oscar Wilde, and he said, "To live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people just exist." Excellent. Very good one to end the call on. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. You're very welcome. It's been lovely to speak to you. Oh, thank you. It's been lovely to speak to you. We'll pop your video on the website, and then I'll pop your links and so forth underneath so people can come and find you and say hi. Great. But thank you. Fab. Thanks. I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Everyone. Cheers, Rebecca. Bye. Bye.